any of the Republicans in the Senate do plan on blocking it or trying to block it? I mean, do you have any sort of early read since you announced it on any stumbling blocks?
I will
talk about the ones that are supportive. But
I will check with NSC and see whether they have heard. I think when people get an opportunity to look at the text of the treaty, which will happen in short order, they'll see, as I said earlier, that this is strongly in our national interest. I don't think this prejudges his decision, but the statement that Senator Lugar put out around the time of our announcement, I think many believed was encouraging in his desire to see swift ratification. And I would, again, I just mentioned, as I said to Bill, this is normally an opportunity for Democrats and Republicans to put aside what normally happens in Washington and come together to ratify something that we have seen Democratic and Republican presidents do for many years, and we're hopeful that that happens again.
And then just on the meeting this morning with the African American religious leaders, can you describe how that meeting went, what they talked about?
I do not have a readout from that, but let me try to get something for you guys.
Just to, Robert, does the
See that? Why, you were acting all aggrieved a minute ago, Lester, like somehow you only get...
I'm delighted. I'm very grateful. Does the President's apology to Doris in North Carolina for his 17-minute answer to her one question mean that in future White House press conferences he will also be brief in response so as to allow more than 13 questioners, presuming he ever has any more press conferences?
Was that one or four? You were sort of pulling the... That was just one? So there's another?
There's one other.
I'm looking with great anticipation to that. Lester, I think I'm largely the one who coined the phrase that it used to take the president several minutes to clear his throat giving answers. So I hope he's not watching. Look, there are complex issues in our times that this president and this Congress have to deal with. Not all of it can be done in neatly phrased 8-second sound bites. When talking about something the size and the scope of healthcare reform, it takes a while to sketch out the landscape, and that's what the president enjoys doing, either in an interview setting or in a town hall meeting where citizens get to ask those questions directly of the president.
Is the president grateful?
I was going to give another 16 minutes on that answer, but I decided.
Sure. Is the president grateful for the statement, quote, "We consider health reform to have been an important battle and a success of Obama's government as made by Fidel Castro"?
I've not seen that statement, but he probably emailed you directly.
The president liked this statement. Did the
yes,
president
ma'am.
like it or not?
I am unaware that he's aware of the statement. Yes, ma'am. I'll come back.
You funny man.
Well, I got to keep myself entertained, Lester. Please tip your waitresses. I'll be here all week. Yes, ma'am. Sorry.
There's a psychological statement saying we cannot change anything unless we accept it. Have you tried to change your strategy towards Iran, to accept nuclear Iran?
Well,
and dealing with nuclear Iran.
I think the president has, president interview yesterday, said he understands, and it's certainly the right of countries to peacefully pursue nuclear power. But Iran has obligations as part of the NPT that it must live up to. Over the past many years, it has taken some very provocative steps in direct avoidance of those obligations. The president outlined with President Sarkozy and Prime Minister Brown at the G20, an effort by the Iranians to go around the IAEA in a clandestine effort that many presumed was to create nuclear material for a nuclear weapon. Again, that breaks their obligation and their commitment to the international community. So I think what you've seen over the past more than a year are efforts at engagement that Iran has decided on at each and every turn to step back from. That has brought the international community along to the point where our partners in the P5+1 will soon, as the President and others have acknowledged, take strong sanctions into the Security Council, and as the President hopes to see those sanctions pass the Security Council by spring.
About regarding meeting President Armenia and President of the United States, any meeting with Prime Minister of Turkey, or three of them?
No meeting. Obviously, on any number of occasions, offers have been given to accept the help of the international community if it lives up to its obligations. And each and every time when faced with either living up to those obligations or walking away from them, the government of Iran has every single time walked away from them. Cool.
Two questions, thanks. One, as far as President's decision last week to sign 123 U.S.-India civil nuclear agreement, Indians are celebrating in India, and also across the street at U.S. Chamber of Commerce, U.S.-India Business Council, 500 Fortune companies are applauding President's decision. Are you making any kind of having any kind of ceremony when Prime Minister of India visits next week here on this issue?
I'm not aware of any specific event around that issue. As we talked about last week, that's something that the President Bush and President Obama both supported. I assume it will come up in their bilateral meeting next week.
And as far as this U.S.-Russia nuclear agreement and also this posture is concerned, many think tanks are saying that although U.S. and Russia will reduce, but China is rising and building up all the nuclear weapons and spreading. So where do we stand as far as China is concerned in the future?
Well, obviously proliferation and many other topics, the President Obama and President Hu will get an opportunity to discuss next week. Obviously, we had an expired START agreement with Russia that needed to be renewed, needed to see deeper cuts in each side's nuclear capabilities. And the President believes it is an enormously important step, as I said earlier, on the road to reducing the nuclear threat in our world. Karen? Yeah.
But
Thanks,
you are,
Thanks, Robert. So obviously there's a number of cases sort of wending their way through the courts right now challenging DOMA and Don't Ask, Don't Tell. Last week, Department of Justice filed another brief defending Don't Ask, Don't Tell. It angered a lot of advocates. Some legal scholars thought it was a step backwards in terms of dismantling the law. Is the President at all concerned that DOJ is a little insular or tone deaf on issues that are sort of politically sticky, especially those of interest to the LGBT community?
I will say this. Obviously, the President has enunciated his support for ending Don't Ask, Don't Tell, rolling back, made a commitment to roll back DOMA in the campaign. Obviously, the Justice Department is charged with upholding the law as it exists, not as the President would like to see it. We have obviously taken steps on the front of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and I think we've made a genuine amount of progress. I will say, was it odd that they included previous statements from General Colin Powell on a belief set that he no longer had? I don't think the president would disagree with that.
Does the president think it's constitutional, don't ask, don't tell?
I have not heard him talk about that. Yep.
To get back to what Secretary Gates may have said a couple of years ago regarding nuclear use posturing, it's always been sort of ambiguous by design in the past. The president believed that that didn't work or really needed changing significantly?
Well, I would say this. We have, as I said earlier, I think the president's new posture